Well, we're 40 minutes in, so we better skip to Akhaten.
Yep.
However, should you wish to listen to our thoughts at large about Akhaten, there is an episode that we did where we talked about that and Praxius. We're kind of gonna do 10 minutes on Akhaten and then skip on to the other episodes that we've never spoken about before. This is my favorite episode of the season, and I don't think that's a popular opinion.
I think even to this day, Akhaten is still frowned upon because it really did not stick the landing when it went out on broadcast.
No, and I watched this with a friend, and she looked at me at the end because she'd never seen Doctor Who before, and she went, "Well, isn't Matt Smith brave to be in that?"
Oh God!
Yeah, so I thought it was the damning indictment. I was
damning with faint praise indeed.
A couple of things I noticed about this one this time is that it feels very much to me like a Star Trek episode than a Doctor Who one. I said before it was
really,
yeah, it's but original series Star Trek, where it was quite big and they could go to planets that were like conceptually a bit weird and a bit over the top with lots of heightened performance and crazy aliens. And the Doctor kind of talks down a massive god planet the same way that Kirk would talk down a massive god computer. With a similarly grandiose speech, but imagine it coming out of Shatner's lips instead of which would be infinitely better. Any speech coming out of Shatner's lips would be infinitely better.
I don't think so. I think no, I'm not going to get into it. I think that.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't chew the scenery like Matt Smith does here, but anyway. Do you know what I think? I think this is the boldest episode of the season because it is, you know me, I like a bit of camp and I like a bit of quirky and a bit of silly, and I don't mind when Doctor Who like dares to be different enough to be a little bit embarrassing. And this has its moments. Bits with Clara on the bike going da 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 da, you know. But it's really fun. It's a really fun story. And another thing I noticed this time was there's a lot of detail. Like Neil Frost has really thought through this world, the layers of this world, the different characters, what they do, the location, the currency. Like this is a really you could probably write a novel around Akhaten, and it'll be a really kind of detailed novel. Where it falls down, I think, is his execution a lot of the time. It wants to be this massive space opera with a Star Wars movie budget. It wants to be made by Disney, you know, right now.
Yeah.
Like The Mandalorian. And unfortunately, it's Doctor Who, which still has an impressive budget, but can afford 20 monsters that it has to superimpose like 100 times to make it look like a theater. And there's lots of kind of CGI and CSO that looks a little bit ropey. I'm not saying it hasn't got like visually stunning moments. It does. I think Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman silhouetted against that moon at the end, that god planet, is really quite a arresting image. But it is clearly reaching for the sky, and it's, you know, halfway up a mountain.
And I seem to remember, because I think when you watched it, you said you thought Jenna Coleman had her best moment in the entire show in this episode?
The whole run. And it's the bit where she does say, the most important leaf in human history. And she just, it's so beautifully understated. And it's set up by the weird beginning where Matt Smith is.
Oh, it is, yeah. That is and you know, it's that kind of thing where you like you know what it's actually trying to do, but it still comes across as a bit creepy.
That's like utterly voyeuristic. The only way it could be creepier would be if he was fiddling with himself while watching her. And frankly, in later parts of the season, he's practically fiddling himself whilst he's watching her anyway. You know that's true in a slightly short skirt.
Yeah, with Akhaten, the thing that really did genuinely strike me about it was I did stop and go, this is really weird, and not weird in a kind of Capaldi era kind of weird where, you know, it's a deliberate high concept experiment where it's consciously tinkering with some kind of fundamental aspect of the format or the show to say something. It's just genuinely quite weird. And I think I think I agree with a lot of on the production front. I think I agree with you. There's some moments where visually it holds up wonderfully. Like I adore the moment when Matt Smith leads Clara out of the TARDIS for the first time and she opens her eyes for the first time. It's beautifully performed.
But just and that later on, like the mummy when he smashes the glass in slow motion, like that's really effective as well.
I think the first shot of Akhaten when before is really striking as well. And then of course you get the bike scenes, and then you're reminded that this is in fact Doctor Who, and you're just like, goodness. It was really weird for me because for the first, I mean, aside from the intro, and actually, yeah, I think we'll both agree on this. I got very annoyed in Series 7B at the number of times an episode either opens or ends with Matt Smith going,
"She's impossible."
Yeah, she can't. What? That really got my nerves by the time of Nightmare in Silver. I was like, just have any.
It's worse in Journey to the Center of the TARDIS where they fucking address the arc and then reset it. I'm sorry. Get there. We'll get
but with Akhaten, I really quite enjoyed it for the first half, or the first act of it. I quite liked, and I really did genuinely like Clara's little chat with the Queen of Years.
Isn't she a terrible actress? Oh, she's awful, and she can't sing either. Oh,
I think she's charming and sweet and that's all that really is required.
But you're not putting her in with the Brood of the Damned, then? The children
I don't put
the era.
As far as I'm concerned, there is no such thing.
Are you joking me? All those bloody kids in Forest of the Dead? No, Forest of the Night and Angie and Artie, they are the Brood of the Damned.
No, but anyway, so I think the scene between her and Clara is really, there's there are moments in this where it's like, this is really written for children, and I don't mean that in a condescending kind of way, but it's written.
It's a Disney movie.
Yeah, like, you know, one of the really interesting things about this episode is that it is probably, I think, by consensus, maybe the least popular Smith episode. But it's full of moments which are some of the most popular Smith moments. Like obviously,
oh, Benny!
Yeah, the Akhaten speech is, you know, one of Matt Smith's most iconic moments.
That is some of the best acting he does in Doctor Who, that sequence.
But in a lot of ways, I think he gives a speech which is much better than that in this episode. I think the speech he gives the Queen of Years, where he's talking about how all the elements in your body come together, and I think that speech, I genuinely think that speech is so. It's one of those moments where it's like, that is written for children.
It's like that is standing, isn't it? Obviously, like the bit at the end with the bloody Great Planet with the pumpkin head. It's less subtle, isn't it? So it stands out more, I think.
Yeah. And the middle, I think, is where Rings of Akhaten kind of loses me a little bit, when it's a lot of Matt Smith waving a sonic screwdriver, the Godfather waking up, all this toing and froing.
There's one bit, right, which absolutely says to me, classic Who, where the singing, the Queen of Years is singing her song at the end. It's like, la 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 la, and then it cuts to this bloke in drag just stop going, oh. I was like, God, how did that make the cut? Like,
yeah. One of the things I do actually, now that you've mentioned the Matt Smith scene, it is very big and it's very actorly. That speech has never really landed with me personally.
Like the way it builds momentum, that speech, and he starts slow and subtle and builds until he's crying. Like he's really giving it. Like that's an actor who's not afraid to go to the edge and then jump over.
Oh no, and I don't this it's not me critiquing Matt Smith's performance. I think it's exquisite. And but the thing I take an issue with that speech is that I remember watching it and it feeling like a Matt Smith speech. Like, after Pandorica opens, it's like, oh, we should give Matt Smith more speeches like the Pandorica speech. And that one, this one where the doctor's going, I have seen things. I was like, oh, but the thing I actually really like, about the speech is that, it's the doctor giving his entire life to this god, and it's not enough. It's not enough.
No,
and
he's hungry for a leaf.
Yeah, but it's all, and I think the whole leaf thing, it's very sentimental and very goopy.
It is a Disney movie. We've had it's sentimental characters. It's all built in. It's part of this world. If you don't really like that style of storytelling, that sort of tone, yeah, then you're absolutely going to reject this. Well, I think it follows through on the sort of the setting that it's created, and that's the payoff there, and it tells us something about Clara for the only time that season. It gives Jenna Coleman a chance to properly act. Sorry, she does act in other episodes. And it reduces me to tears because I don't want to make a big thing of this, but obviously I've lost my mum, and she says it's full of all those moments that my mum won't have, and I can buy into that absolutely. So that moment reduces me to tears, and it's her performance, but it's also the words that she's saying.
And there's a moment at the very, very end of the episode where the people of Akhaten give her back her mother's ring, and that moment really landed for me. It was like that, that's a sacrifice, and because sometimes things get returned to characters in the Moffat era, and it feels like you took that away, but there's no consequence to it. That was a moment where I was like, you took something away from Clara, she sacrificed something, and she gets it back again, and it feels earned.
And we did address this in our other episode, but this also has the worst bit of dialogue in it of the entire half season, and that is, "Oh my stars!"
Yeah, I think it was when Jenna Coleman said it. I was like, we're really making Jenna Coleman say, "Oh my stars."
God bless her. Oh,
but
sorry, that was half an hour. But don't forget, we were like 10 minutes of the first bit was I was sorting out the technology issues, so it's not quite as long as you think so far.
Shall we just go straight into the next one?
Well, let's wrap up Akhaten. Let's give it a little summary and then move on. Yeah. So do you want to go first?
Sure. So, am I summarizing? Am I going straight into summarizing?
Do you want to?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Unless you've got something else.
We could unpick Akhaten more, but we kind of have, haven't we?
Yeah, and we can. Yeah. Do I have anything else kind of to add? No, let's keep pressing. Yeah.
Okay. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So yeah, so with Akhaten, at least for me, it is this kind of story where I get why to this day, I get why people don't like it, because it is going for a very particular tone, and again, I think it is written for, I keep saying this, it is written for children. It's written about children facing their fears, about being scared of responsibilities, about being scared of running away, about being scared about losing family. All these things are there, and it wraps it up in this kind of essentially magical world. I don't think even the economy of, as much as I love the idea of, it's in the currency itself. You've got a story that is, heavily sentimental tonally. And some people didn't like that, but it's literally built into the fabric of the world, because literally the currency itself is sentiment, and sentimentality.
And
so
the stories that geez, man, I'd be fucking rich. This was a present from my friend Tim, who came all the way from New Zealand. This was a present from my friend Mark, who's got another. Like, I could, Jesus Christ, I've got so much sentimental currency around me. Get me to Akhaten now, I'll be a bloody millionaire.
I can't help. I can't help but think, but that the way that economy works, it just means that people are like desperately making connections with each other to make money. Like, be my best friend so I can buy food this week.
You could totally exploit that system, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. But also, I think the poverty rates in the rings of Akhaten must be skyrocketing. It's like, where do you have to go once you sold your mother's ring? Anyway, Akhaten, I think it's unwieldy in places. Structurally, I think it doesn't fit together very well. But I do think I like what I do. Like you said, I admire what it's trying to do. I admire, for me, it's an interesting experiment. It's a brave one. It's genuinely brave, and it's one of those experiments that is neither a success nor a failure. I don't think it's not a Sleep No More, and it's not a Heaven Sent. But
like, regardless of anything, it's watchable. Like, I've heard like Pete Lambert, he didn't watch this. I think he watched 10 minutes, and someone phoned him up and said, "Oh, I'm going to the pub." And then he went to the pub, and then he never watched it back. When he came back, it was like, I don't want to watch the end of that. Like, it's watchable, I think.
So I would summarize it as, somewhat unwieldy, sentimental, but it earns its sentimentality.
I think it's ambitious in a way quite a few of these episodes this season aren't. It goes some way in the writing towards executing what it's trying to do, but it doesn't have the money behind it. My biggest issue with it is this is essentially the end of the world. It's the companion going to a weird, exciting alien place, surrounded by mad creatures and things like this. And going back to that kind of Doctor Who's lost its confidence or lost its pizzazz, the end of the world was literally focused through Rose's eyes, and it asked smart questions of what a human being would feel like in that situation. There's none of that with Clara at all. She just skips through this story, and she doesn't really. She has a mild sense of wonder at the beginning, but after that, she's just on board, and she takes everything in her stride, essentially.
I do think they do a good moment of shell shock with her, where she's in the kind of the bazaar, and all these weird things are happening to her, and then the doctor says, at the time, I think we're all like, oh, that's a nice little 50th anniversary little continuity kind of thing, when Matt Smith kind of goes, my granddaughter.
Oh yeah.
And I think we're all like, ooh, Susan. But really, I think it earns that little moment because it's meant to really show even the doctor is weird and unknowable to Clara.
But you know what I mean when I say the end of the world is channeled through Rose.
Yes.
And it's very easy to be on board with the shock she's going through, and how amusing it is, and how horrifying some moments are. And we're not looking through Clara's eyes in the same way, are we?
Yeah, well, I think it's in many, what the end of the world does is different from what Akhaten does, because Akhaten is all about introducing Clara to something that is completely weird and unknowable, whereas The End of the World is doing that, but it's meshing it through a familiar filter of this is still the Earth. We've got Britney Spears playing in the background, so there's this familiarity.
But at the end of Akhaten, she's riding space bikes and walking up to a god planet with a leaf. Like she's pretty much taking this in her stride.
Yeah, but then again, you do say, it's a genuine sacrifice that Clara does make in that moment, and it is one that Jenna Coleman earns.
Oh no, absolutely, and at the moment it's good, but it's how she's reacting to the world around her. It's kind of what I'm trying to say. There's a deliberate distance between the audience and Clara because Stephen Moffat wants to maintain the mystery of her character. And I think that's an issue this season.
But I don't think you see that in I disagree with that on Akhaten. I think if that were true, you wouldn't get the scene of her talking about getting lost in Blackpool to a scared girl. I think there are moments like
maybe it's Jenna Coleman then. Maybe it's Jenna Coleman finding her feet, and I don't know. For me, I like Clara here, and I like her in this episode. I don't really believe that she's a person in this situation. She's not reacting to it in a way that I would recognize.
Do speaking of believability, the thing that there was a moment where she was just like, that is genuinely like super believable. I've been is at the beginning when the doctor goes, what do you want? Where do you want to go? What do you want to see? And she goes, I don't know. It's like when someone asks you, what's your favorite book? And you suddenly forget every single book. I was like, that is me.
That was done better in The End of the World as well. That bit at the beginning of like, where she's like, oh, what's out there? Like it was just done better.
But they're different beats because
exactly the same thing. He's like, where do you want to go? Somewhere amazing. Okay, great. Like it's
no, but it's different. It is different because in End of the World, Rose makes a decision from the get-go. She says, I want to go forwards, but then doesn't know how far forward she wants to go. Clara does something else where she's just like, it's like it all filters out of her head, which is, I do that all the time. You go up to anybody and ask them, what's your favorite film? Or like, what's your favorite, maybe not what's your favorite TV show. That's the wrong podcast. So you have asking that question. But people go, oh, I can't think. But anyway, we're getting really caught up on a very specific moment.
Yeah, that's true. And I really like this. I know I'm criticizing it a lot, but I do genuinely think this is the boldest statement in series 7B. And it's the one episode that's trying to do something completely out there. And I admire it for that. Cold War.
Oh, do we have to? Do we have to do this?
Okay, my question about Cold War is this, yeah? Why the fuck doesn't this work? Because on paper, it's a tense setting. It's a dramatic time period. It's the Cold fucking War.
Yeah.
It's a classic monster. It's populated with Liam Cunningham and David Warner, for God's sakes. It has one of the more striking directors behind it who went on to do like Listen and Time Heist. Why is this so boring?
This one, I was watching this earlier today and there were several points where I was just on my phone. I think you've kind of already identified it in some ways because you're right. On paper, this is terrific. Ice Warriors on a submarine is a really good pitch for a story. It's throwing in the sort of and making it a Soviet submarine is like is a little is like icing on the cake.
But Moffat didn't want Ice Warriors, did he? He did not. Ice Warriors, and Gatiss had to convince him. And he pitched, the submarine, the Cold War, blah, blah. And apparently Moffat's eyes lit up and he was like, yeah, do it.
Yeah. And I think I think he was a bit hesitant with the Ice Warriors because on the one hand, it's a fun design. But on the other hand, they have an odd voice and they're called the Ice Warriors and they lumber.
But yeah.
However, it is a really good combination of ideas that Gators comes up with,
Hmm.
but it never really it doesn't really progress beyond those initial ideas. It's like, this is the premise, and that's it. Nothing else really happens beyond that point. It has, it has its starting ideas, but then doesn't go anywhere after that. It's like, we're on a submarine. That's all we need. We have the Ice Warriors. I mean, they do try to do ostensibly they're trying to do new things with the Ice Warriors, like the Ice Warriors out of the suit. But it doesn't really, it's not interesting.
That is the shittiest CGI I've ever seen in my life. It's terrible. Like if you're building up to this, you're going to see the Ice Warriors out the suit. Oh man, it honestly looks like a 1980s cartoon.
It's really weird, because earlier in the episode, when Skaldak is out of the suit, he's got these terrible practical effect rubber lizard arms.
They keep coming down, but they keep going down like
Yeah.
people's heads. Like,
yeah, and it's really weird, because half of it, the bits of his we either see him in the suit, but when he's outside the suit, he's either got these really terrible fake arms, or he's got this really terrible CGI head.
I've seen some really awful like Poundland B movies that have like practical effects like that with the crappy hands. Oh come on, like they can do better than this, can't they?
I think one of the things that I think the submarine is really well done. I think the set is.
It's bloody massive. What are you talking about? There's no submarine on this earth that's that big.
Have you been in a submarine?
I have been in a submarine, yes.
Okay.
They're bloody tiny. They're so cramped. These have got huge, bloody great tunnels in them. This is Mark Gatiss said I digged out the DWM that had the preview about this, and Mark Gatiss talking about it. Is it Gatiss or Gatiss?
I think it's Gators.
Mark Gatiss talking about it, and he said they had to Hollywoodize the submarine, but they do it to such a ridiculous degree. Like it's
I think I think you lose some of the. I mean, you do get some bits of claustrophobia, but actually, one thing I was really aware of was with Douglas McKinnon's direction is that I think when he's given a lot of restrictions, the way he will try to cover up changes in sets and differences in rooms, he'll try to do a lot of big lighting, like big mood lighting. So it's the same thing in Time Heist. He uses different lighting gels to disguise the fact that Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman are running down the same corridor multiple times.
Weird enough, in Time Heist, though, I felt like there was more space to be creative because we're going to different locations, and there's lots of crazy shit happening in that. Whereas here, it felt like every room we went to in this submarine, it was a different color,
Yeah, it is really. It's one of the upsetting things with Cold War is that I don't even think it's particularly bad. It's just blandly competent.
Oh, I mean,
it's like
I'd point that at this half season as a whole.
I think I don't think blandly competent is one thing you can really say about 7B.
No, just bland. Sorry.
With Cold War, like
there's no surprises here, is there? There's nothing like once there's an Ice Warrior there, which is early. It's like, okay, so the Ice Warrior stalks them through the ship. People die. Yeah. They run around screaming. They're a bit nervous. For some reason, David Warner's playing a load of pop music. I don't know. I think that's his character, isn't it? He plays pop music.
Yeah, David Warner is a bit of and do you know what was really one moment that really frustrated me is when Clara is talking to David Warner's character, and it's meant to be a moment where he's asking her what's wrong, why are you so rattled, and she talks about how like the deaths and the dissections that Skaldak has done. His like, she says that line where she's like, suddenly it's all become very real, and I was just like, this should be the most emotionally resonant thing. And I was like, there is no connection here. And how is that possible when you have Jenna Coleman and David Warner?
And the bit where she has to go in and like face the Ice Warrior should be the most terrifying moment, the companion having to face this terrifying monster. And I just felt nothing. It just felt like there's just nothing to her. Blow her and off she goes like a paper bag. She's just so insubstantial.
Again, this was one of the episodes where I was kind of like, that Clara doesn't really have much of a character here. It feels like more an exercise in letting Jenna Coleman play and make choices as an actor in doing companionly things, if that makes sense.
I've read a lot of the BBC books, and I know that Mark Gatiss is perfectly capable of characterizing Doctor Who companions vividly. I don't know what goes wrong in his TV episodes. He just goes into companion default mode a lot of the time. But I think his best stab at Clara was Robot Sherwood, where he lets her have fun and lets her be the one that's really enjoying herself. Like I think she's really engaging in that story. But there's just yeah, I know. I keep saying the same thing. There's just nothing to her at all.
And like I said, I think Jenna Coleman's doing a lot of good work in this story. I don't think she doesn't have a lot to work with, but she's a good actor, and she's making interesting choices. But again, it's this thing where
I would argue against that. I don't think she really knows what she's doing in this first stretch of episodes. I think she's a bit unsure how to play Doctor Who. And so it feels to me like she's saying the lines, but there's not, like when we get to Deep Breath and there's like a hard reset and there's an effort to pour character into Clara and then to give her a relationship with the Doctor that's spiky and interesting. She seizes hold of that. You can see her in Deep Breath seizing hold of that material and just going for it. Here, I think she's just kind of sleepwalking a bit through the plot.
I don't know. I wouldn't say sleepwalking, but I do agree that she's not given material that particularly challenges her. One thing with this story, I suppose, is I suppose it was a bad sign for me where the only thing that really surprised me is like, how did this story get 3 leads from The Crown in it?
Oh God,
I was like,
wasn't it?
I was like,
it's wasting great guest actors again.
I was like, but even the thing that really surprised me is that Pietra, who is the sailor who with the blowtorch, I was just like, that's Prince, that's Prince Charles from The Crown. And then of course you have literally both actors who played Prince Philip and I took a screenshot of is it Tobias Menzies? Is that his name? And Matt Smith together in the same scene as like time travel. You've got we're
doing like wasted guest actor watch. We've had Celia Imrie in The Bells of St. John. We've got David Warner in this.
I maintain that isn't a waste.
I think they're both a waste, and I know. Well,
I think David Warner is more of a waste though, because he at least Miss Kislet has some fun lines and some fun moments. David Warner gets nothing here.
I don't know what the point of his character is in this. I don't know what he contributes apart from
he's a that was a moment where I was like, I felt like such a grump where it was just like, do they split up? And I was just like, Gatiss, I know what you're trying to do. It is not funny. It's
so bad. Chibnall could have written that comedy line.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I have a lot to say about Cold War. It is tediously dull.
You'll watch it and then forget it.
Yeah, I'm scared.
And if you want to see the new series and Margators do the Ice Warriors better, watch Empress of Mars.
I don't think Empress of Mars is reaching for the stars, but I do think it's more fun than this.
Yeah, and I think with the I feel like in Cold War, Gators is trying to explore things Ice Warriors can do as villains more, like what happens when they leave the suit. And there's a lot of background world building, which isn't really interesting at all. Whereas Empress of Mars is just like, its big idea is there's a female ice warrior, and somehow that's quite compelling.
And Victorian troops on Mars.
Which is admittedly a very...
It turns human beings into bouncy balls.
That's right, it does. It does turn them into, as you say, bouncy balls.
I would basically sum this one up.
I'm not even going to. What's there to say?
Well, I just say it's so painfully unambitious because it's basically Doctor Who by numbers, isn't it? Tense setting, classic monster, couple of guest actors. I can see why Stephen Moffat went for this. It just doesn't come off at all.
My summary is, yep, that definitely was an episode of a television show.
Woo! Oh, that's scathing for you, that is.
That's that did in fact roll over my eyes.
What's next?